This is a reading from the book, The Education of a Black Radical. I am Dyami Bailey, the author. This is from the chapter, Growing Up in Memphis. Our high school at Booker T. Washington had a tracking system, though I didn't know it at the time. On entering, I was placed in homeroom 9A, the designation that represented the highest level of academic assessment and expectations for ninth graders. Our principal, Blair T. Hunt, was a stately, fair-skinned, well-dressed man with a receding hairline. He sought to instill pride and accountability in each student, always telling us in his rich, deep voice, quote, "You are somebody." Hunt ruled the school with a firm hand, always carrying a large bell as he walked through the hallways. If you heard the distant tinkle of that bell, you knew it was time to get to your proper place. Hunt was known on occasion, even, to thrust his bell into the student's back to nudge him or her, particularly him, to move along. Hunt had guided decades of students, including my parents, and at the time he pastored one of Memphis's most promising black churches. Hunt's influence as leader of the city's largest black high school was enhanced by his political association with one of the leading political bosses of the era, E.H. Crump, who built a machine across the state. Hunt was the leading black booster for the Crump machine, similar to the way the great musician W.C. Handy was the machine's leading trumpeter. The halls of Washington were awash with talented black teachers, some new and some having taught there for generations. When you walked off the sidewalk into the school, you knew the teachers and staff were in a command position and were eager to hone and refine the raw human talent surging through the school's doors. One great teacher of mine was Professor Nat D. Williams. Williams was a short, stocky man with rich, dark skin, thinning, coarse hair, a broad grin, and eyeglasses as thick as a pop bottle's bottom. He was a favorite among the students as he exhorted us to have multiple skills and to learn how to do the things that would help us get a job. Williams was an intellectual who wrote a weekly syndicated column for black newspapers and was a popular radio host at the city's first black radio station. In front of my Tennessee history class, Williams stood with a broad smile as he summed up his theory of strategic survival. Quote, "The Indian fought and died. The Negro grinned and multiplied." In Williams's class, the questions weren't always whether you would succeed, but rather how you would succeed. A block and a half from us on Ford at the corner of Mississippi and Walker sat People's Drugstore. It was only later that I learned that on this very spot was originally the People's Grocery. Today, a state marker notes the history of that spot. It reads, Calvin McDowell, Thomas Moss, and Will Stewart, co-owners of People's Grocery, were arrested in connection with a disturbance near the store. Rather than being brought to trial, they were lynched on March 9, 1892. Moss's dying words were, quote, "Tell my people to go west. There is no justice for them here." This lynching prompted Ida B. Wells, editor of Memphis's Free Speech, to begin her anti-lynching campaign in this country and abroad. In my teen years, the People's Grocery site was occupied by People's Drugstore. This spacious store was owned by one of Memphis's two black pharmacists, Dr. William Pippin, who carried forth the People's name. Pippin helped nurture me as a store delivery boy. On a heavy maroon bike with a wire basket in front, I rode the neighborhood delivering ice cream, medicine, and toiletries. I also cleaned the place at night prior to closing. The store had a long Formica sundry counter with about 8 stools and tubs of ice cream behind the counter in the freezer. And we would serve regulars there, most of whom at times would be Lamont students who would pile into the store after classes in the afternoon. Pippin's wife was one of the teachers at my high school. Working at the drugstore opened a whole new world to me. There was a big circular wire news rack at the front of the store on which were posted newspapers and magazines covering black affairs around the country. The Memphis Black Press was in the forefront of reporting civil rights news from Montgomery, Alabama, to Jackson to Little Rock. The racks held black news from the Pittsburgh Courier, Chicago Defender, Atlanta Daily World, and Jet and Ebony magazines, among others. There were also black romance magazines like Sepia and Bronze Thrill, the latter a bit risque. And I might say as a side, sometimes look at it under the table. But I would pass the time in the store when I wasn't busy reading these publications. They propelled me into the midst of the racially motivated lynchings of the black youth, Emmett Till, of Rosa Parks's Montgomery bus boycott, and the violence against black students my age trying to integrate Central High School, Little Rock. This is a reading from Growing Up in Memphis, The Education of a Black Radical. I am Dyami Bailey, the author.